I'm Mark Yarborough, and I'm a faculty member with the Bioethics program at the University of California, Davis, and I hold the title of Dean's Professor of Bioethics. The title of the article is Increasing Enrollment in Drug Trials, the Need for Greater Transparency About the Social Value of Research and Recruitment Efforts. You know, there's tremendous, I think it's fair to say there's worldwide concern in the biomedical research community that enrollment in clinical trials is lagging. And the more that enrollment lags, then clearly the more that the less clinical research gets done. So the research community is really putting a lot of time and effort into exploring strategies that might make it easier to increase enrollment in clinical trials. Part of the strategy that's being explored or is being recommended by certain segments in the research community is that we need to encourage the public to adopt a more sort of supportive attitudes toward participation in clinical research. And I think that more supportive attitude is certainly warranted for a lot of biomedical research, perhaps even most clinical research, but it's not warranted in all cases. And in fact, there are good reasons that some people in the public would not want to be very supportive of certain types of clinical research. Certainly not all, but some types. If you think of the clinical research enterprise as a whole and the good that it does a lot of good. It's brought tremendous life improving and life-saving drugs and other instruments in our healthcare system, if you will, that have really improved a lot of patients, not only here in the United States, but literally across the world. But what's true of the whole of the research enterprise, namely that it brings us important social goods, that's not true of all the parts. There are some clinical trials that, to be very candid and honest, deserve less public support as opposed to more public support. And that, I think, it's important not to lose sight of that. So as we explore strategies for increasing enrollment in clinical trials, trying to increase public support for clinical trials, we need to remain mindful of the fact that, you know, some clinical research is much more deserving of the public's trust than other clinical research. And unfortunately, there aren't many good mechanisms currently in place for helping members of the public decide whether or not a given drug trial really deserves greater public support or less public support. There's not enough transparency and information about the true social value of any given individual clinical trial. I think one of the fundamental points is that not all clinical research is equal. A new trial to study an intervention for a really devastating disease like Huntington's disease that lacks any kind of effective treatment. Amazing progress is going on in stem cell research that holds forth the promise that perhaps for the first time we might be able to have, if not a cure for Huntington's disease, at least a new and effective treatment for it. That kind of research is night and day difference from a clinical trial to study a drug that is a so-called Me Too drug, if you will. And the reason that research is being done, and the reason it's called a Me Too drug study, is that there are already several effective drugs available to treat the condition, such as high blood pressure, let's say, that this new drug is going to be competing with. The sponsors are hoping to get FDA approval here in the United States so that they can begin to market that medication in a way that will compete with other existing very effective medications, many of which may be generic medications that are going to be much cheaper than the new medication that the sponsor is hoping to get a patent for. One kind deserves a lot of public support because it's going to bring tremendous social value to our community. The other really isn't going to make anyone any better off from a health point of view, or any benefits are going to be very minor. So there's a huge discrepancy in the social value between those two kinds of clinical trials. And currently, when people are asked to participate in a clinical trial, they're really not given much information about what social value, if any, a clinical trial has. The central idea in the article is that we need to incorporate in the informed consent process a very simple and direct disclosure that would be available to all people considering enrolling in a clinical trial. And what that disclosure would be is a simple description of what the social value of the trial is. And the social value may be great, it may be modest, it may be important, it may be trivial. But this new, very simple disclosure that's being proposed, it would put in black and white, if you will, in the consent form, and thus make it a central part of the not only the informed consent process, but the IRB review process as well. There would be a basic disclosure about the social value of the proposed clinical trial. And that would bring a new level of information to people to help them make better decisions about possibly participating in clinical trials based upon what the social value is. One of the key issues I'm trying to get at in the article is when we look at public campaigns or efforts by the research community to interest people in participating in research, they most likely are going to tout the significant social value that the research enterprise has. And that can quickly get transferred in the mind of people. Well, I'm being asked to participate in a clinical trial. This is really important. This is something that I ought to do. Since not all research is created equal, we need to give them information that helps them discriminate between research that they're being told is very, very important from research that, in this particular case, the research that I'm being asked to participate in, well, maybe it's not as important as what the research community is claiming about all research in general. One possible good outcome from the article here is that there could just be discussion within the research community about whether or not the kind of transparency I'm arguing that we need to bring to the research setting, whether or not that degree of transparency would be valuable. And I think the more conversation and discussion there could be about that, I think a consensus would emerge that yes, we do need greater transparency. If we want to preserve the trust of the public, we need to show them that we in fact deserve the trust that we're soliciting. And transparency about the social value of research is one way to build that trust. I think another potential benefit of increased transparency about the social value of research can extend to research institutions and not just towards prospective participants in clinical trials. Research institutions, they like to tout the importance of the research that they're doing. It's part of their public persona. If you have individual investigators who have to disclose to potential research participants and their IRBs what the social value of their research is, then over a fairly short period of time, we can develop a collective sense about the overall significance of the research that's going on in our institution. Many, if not most, research institutions will look very good as a result of that, because there will be greater transparency about the high numbers of research trials going on that in fact hold the promise to bring important benefits to our community. On the other hand, if we recognize that, the reality of our research in terms of social value doesn't quite live up to our rhetoric, then that's an opportunity for introspection. Do we need to make changes? Do we want to change the kind of research that we're doing here? So the transparency benefits not only individual research participants, but I think it benefits research institutions as well and the people who conduct research there.
We hope you benefited from this presentation based on the content of Mayo Clinic Proceedings. Our journal's mission is to promote the best interests of patients by advancing the knowledge and professionalism of the physician community. If you're interested in more information about Mayo Clinic Proceedings, visit our website at www.mayoclinicproceedings.org. There you will find additional videos on our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Twitter. For more information on healthcare at Mayo Clinic, please visit www.mayoclinic.org. This video content is copyrighted by Mayo Foundation for Medical Education and Research.